unpacking today's headlines. This is Souls and Liberty in Depth.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Depth, a production of Souls and Liberty. 57 days to go until the election, and it's the day before the debate. Should we say the debate? And in view of a New York Times Siena poll that came out over the weekend, Kamala Harris and her fellow commies have got to be as nervous as long-tailed cats in a room full of rocking chairs. Joining us today to catch up on all of this over the weekend developments, Jim Ellis and Trey Traynor. I'm Gary Michael Voris, coming to you from Houston. Gentlemen, about a day ago, with one day since that, what do you guys think of that poll? Jim, you're the big polling guru here. What do you think? I mean, they got to be nervous about that.
Well, it's what we said would happen a couple of weeks ago, that after Labor Day, things would gel. We'd probably see the race normalize again. It would come back to basically an even contest. And it's an interesting poll. The New York Times Siena College, they have proven to be one of the more accurate pollsters out there. And even in their own poll, there was another dichotomy that we've talked about before. So they asked the question, do you want to see a change from the Biden administration? And 61% of the respondents said they did. And they said which candidate would bring about this change. And by a 53 to 25 margin, they said Trump. Yep. And then when it comes to the ballot test vote, he's only ahead by 2. So again, we see this dichotomy of people wanting change. The right track, wrong track is always on the wrong track by 2 to 1 margin. Yet when it comes to the actual vote, they go back and vote for what they've got. It's really a strange dichotomy, something we haven't seen, at least I haven't seen to this degree, and so consistently ever before.
Yeah, it's when you think about that dichotomy and then look down, and in case people are wondering what we're talking about, that when they release a poll, big pollsters release these polls, they also release, generally release what's called the crosstabs, where they get into all of the nitty gritty of every single question they asked, and they break it down according to gender and party and or sex and party and, affiliation. Are you liberal, conservative, and the whole bit. Trey, to this point of like the closeness, at least the way New York Times sees things in the Siena College poll, most of the country identified as conservative to moderate. I think that was like 54 to 32 or something like that. And to Jim's point there, hey, we're on the wrong track. This thing's a disaster. And as you go through all of this, there's a little bit of, maybe not troubling, but, kind of news for Trump. But there was like one bombshell after another, against, Kamala. What do you make of it?
Well, I think the important thing in all of these polls that we're seeing now, like Jim said, coming after Labor Day, is that the American people are starting to focus on particular issues that are important to them. And I think that's what these polls are reflecting, is that the more people sit down and look at the issues that are really important to them, whether it be the economy, whether it be illegal immigration, whether it be the wars that are happening around the world right now, they look at those and they weigh those as the interests that they have. And I think that influences the answers that they give in these polling situations. I think that these polls are underpolling the support that President Trump has. I think
we hear that all the time. Why do you think that? Because we hear that all the time. Sure. You can add like 2 or 3 points for Trump. Why do you think that?
Because I think there's still some reticence between of those people who have traditionally voted for the Democratic candidate to actually tell somebody publicly that they are in fact supporting Donald Trump for president. I think we saw that phenomenon in 2016 when there was a large portion of blue collar workers in the Midwest who broke for Trump, but the polling numbers did not pick up that until at the very last minute, or maybe even in the exit polling that we saw there. So I think that's still there. I think you see large establishment union leaders who are supporting the Democratic ticket, and yet you have rank and file union members who are supporting former President Trump. And I think that's not being reflected in these polls. So I think these polls, while they're tight, and I agree that the country is split very tightly, as you said, I think it's still a conservative to moderate electorate out there nationwide, and so I think President Trump is underpolling in these polls.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly makes sense. A reasonable presentation there. Jim, back to you. Finally, at last, Kamala, as I like to call her, Kamala has finally released her policies. And I was glancing at them, and I was actually kind of surprised. She's got her X page or Twitter page, and I think there was the one I looked at, it was like 21,000 or something like that. Likes and a few thousand comments. I got to say, most of the comments were like, "Screw you! You've been there for 4 years, and who cares what you got to say now? This is all lies." I tweeted something out like that myself, just saying. Really releasing her policies the day before the debate, and it may be the only debate. What do you think of that as a political strategy on her part?
Well, I think they just think they can get away with anything. And I mean, they obviously think that because she's changed her positions, her long-held positions on virtually every issue. And they think they can pull one on the American people because they know the media will back them up. And I think they're right about that. Can they get away with it? That's where the debate comes in and is very important. And I think that's why Harris doesn't want to debate, and that she will probably not participate in anything beyond tomorrow night. And I guess we'll see if she even shows up for tomorrow night. Nancy Pelosi was saying now that, I can see cowardice in Trump's eyes and he may pull out. So really? So that might be a clue that maybe we'll see some type of a postponement or Harris backing out of this thing because she doesn't want to debate. Because, I mean, she's extremely vulnerable. And this is the type of forum where it's going to become pretty obvious to everybody that where she has changed her position on so many issues. Why are you doing that? Even Bernie Sanders said this weekend.
Yes, he did. I watched that.
Well, she's doing that because she has to win the election. I mean, yes.
He just blabbed it right out there. And I was like,
exactly.
Whoa.
Yeah, I'm glad he admitted that. I mean, Bernie Sanders, say what you will about him, he is an honest guy. And so we'll just see just how long this can go on. But back to the previous question, too, I think you've got why we see such a change in the ballot test versus how people are answering some of these other questions, right track, wrong track, or if they want to change from Biden. Mm-hmm. Is this the Trump derangement system that people have such a negative feeling towards Trump they won't vote for him no matter what?
Right.
Or is it, as Trey was saying, that Trump is underpolling? It might be a combination of both, but you can understand why some people wouldn't want to say, I'm for Trump.
Sure.
In a poll, particularly from the New York Times, when they know it's the New York Times calling them and they're really going to say, I'm for Trump. And
I'm a Trumpy.
Knowing that they know who you are.
Yeah.
And so I think there is some reticence to these pollings, and that explains some of the underpolls. But it goes state by state. And you see, I think in those Midwest or Mid-Atlantic states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, Trump is definitely underpolled. And a lot of the southern states. Georgia's one place where he hasn't. Georgia, they actually look like they overpoll a little bit. So it depends on the region, depends on the states, but there is certainly an underpoll factor.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree with that. And Jim, take a listen to this question because I'm going to shoot it to Trey first. I'm going to come back with the same question to you. When they listed in this poll, pardon me, when they listed in this poll, what are your top issues? The economy was number one. Number three was immigration. But number two was abortion at 12%. So for 12% of the people, this is my number one concern. And of course, they have inflation, which I guess in my mind is way down. It's down on the list, but it sort of folds into the economy. But anyway, that's not how they ask the questions. But are you surprised, Trey, that abortion would be number two on the list of most concerns?
It doesn't surprise me given the amount of time and money that the Democratic Party has put into that particular issue. I mean, when their entire campaign is built around one particular issue, it's obviously going to drive up the recognition that that issue has amongst the electorate. And so it's going to be top of mind. I mean, you think about these people getting these calls and being polled. It's like, well, what issues have you heard about on TV or on radio? Well, I've heard about the economy. I've heard about abortion. I mean, those are the type of questions that you get in those situations. Or you put somebody on the spot who doesn't pay attention to politics a lot, and they say, well, what issues are important to you? And they're like, well, I've heard 19 issue ads about abortion. So obviously that's got to be important. I want to sound like I'm conversing on this topic to this pollster, and therefore that's what I'm going to mention. So, I mean, 12% tells you what it is. I mean, it's still a minority issue with regard to what is really important in this election. I mean, the real issues that are importance across the country are the economy and illegal immigration. And so, yes, abortion is out there. Now, the Democratic Party is going to focus on abortion and the moral evil that abortion is, because that's what was their success plan for the midterm elections. And so they want to continue to focus on that, and they will continue to focus on that. And it's still going to keep it out there as an issue. That's why it's important. That's why it's important, I think, in this upcoming debate for former President Trump to talk about the great work that he did of getting justices put on the Supreme Court that pushed the abortion issue back to the states where the Constitution rightly places that type of issue.
Sure. Jim, same question for you. Abortion, number 2 on the list.
I'm not surprised at all.
Up the first one being the economy, the third one being immigration, I think number 6 or 7 or something, was inflation, which I think sort of folds back into economy. You add those 2 or 3 together, and I mean, abortion is kind of not even on the table, but that it would finish up number 2. Your thoughts?
Not surprised at all. In fact, we really saw that in the voting behavior in 2022, and it's for the reasons that Trey mentioned. The Democrats ran a single issue campaign, and they're basically doing that again. And now it's couched in terms of freedom. They're the party of freedom because they're for abortion. And so that's how they've defined freedom. And because they know, obviously, that's an important term and issue. But what we did see was the abortion issue was a vote driver in 2022. And so the fact that it is now popping up as the second most important issue on that poll is not particularly surprising. It wasn't popping up in the polling in 2022, but it did prove to be a vote driver. And again, when you've got one party that's running a single issue race, basically, because that's all they have to talk about. What are they? They're going to talk about the border. They're going to talk about the economy. They're going to talk about the wars overseas. None of which existed when Trump was president. So, no, the answer is, and obviously they're not. And now, actually, if you notice, coming out of Arizona, speaking of the border for a second, now we see them, Senator Mark Kelly, for example, his narrative now is there is no problem on the border. And then the Tucson Congressional District, which is very tight with the Republican Congressman Juan Ciscomani, his opponent, they have her on an ad, and a reporter says, is there a problem at the border? And she says, no. So that just seems to be their latest narrative on the border issue, that, there's no problem there.
Yeah, I mean, that's
so
what
it's just
that's what they're saying. They wouldn't even say the word crisis for 3 years. Yeah. So
right. I mean, it's astonishing that they just so bold can get and think they can get away with this, and maybe they can. We won't know for sure until Election Day.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little... But
they obviously think they do, or they're not. They're saying, no, there's no problem.
Yeah. Well, and I think at the end of the day, I think you'll see this as the tactic that I think Vice President Harris will use against Donald Trump in the debate, is to deflect on the issue of the border. She's going to try to claim that she's been to the. She's going to try to claim that she's been to the border. She's going to try to claim that she's done something to fix the border, and then shrug it off as saying, there's not a problem there, because that's the only response that you can possibly have. There is no response to say, here's what I've done. Here are hard and fast, tangible items that I can point to that have taken care of the border crisis. They have to just try to explain it away. And you see it happening across the country. You've seen it with Colin Allred doing the same thing to Ted Cruz here. He's trying to discount the fact that he was against the border wall. And now all of a sudden he's in favor of the border wall, all of those type of things, because they've been so ardently anti security on the border for so long that they're now having to just say, well, it's not a problem, in hope that lie will sell.
Yeah, I mean, that seems
Yeah,
to be
and I think if I could hop in for a
their only
second.
alternative.
Yeah, can I hop in for a second? I think what they'll do tomorrow night, she will accuse Trump of defeating the so-called bipartisan border bill, which even Republicans were on board. And because Trump told them not to vote for it because it would hurt his campaign, that's why it was defeated. And
I got to jump in,
obviously
Jim.
this
The
was
second,
just
the second she says that, all he needs to turn around and say, oh, yeah, the reason I told them not to vote for it and think it would be a bad idea is because you let 5,000 illegals in every day as opposed to the 10,000. You think that's a nice compromise? There should be no illegals. That's my position. It's my position of vast part of the country. Next.
Yeah. And then they're going to stop at 5,001?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah, I mean, yeah.
What if the one is a little like 9-year-old boy or 9-year-old girl and that's his uncle or whoever, you know?
And then you have to let the 2 and the 3 and the 4 and the 5 in too.
Yeah.
So,
and really, when you think about the absurdity of that, I mean, you always contest the when you get out of the ether and the clouds and the generalities, you get down to it. So at all these various points along the border, dozens and dozens of them, where at any given moment, there could be 2, 5, 20, 4,000 people coming across the border. Are all the border agents like on their cell phones with each other with their clickers in their hand going, all right, this is checkpoint Bravo. We let 243 in right now. We're checkpoint Charlie. We just let in 196. Are we near 5,000 yet? I mean, the whole idea of it's just completely ridiculous. That was just a political smokescreen on the Democrats' part.
Now, the other thing to watch for, now over the weekend, Harris released a new ad. And in the ad, she talks about, it's her speaking to the camera and saying that I want a middle-class tax cut. And Donald Trump will raise your taxes. Donald Trump will raise your taxes, quote. What they have to come back to, and I hope Trump brings this up, and I'm surprised it hasn't been more of an issue yet because it's going to be a big deal in 2025. Sure. And that's the expiration of the Trump tax cuts, which will result in the biggest tax increase in American history. And that happens if Congress and the president does nothing, because then they will expire. And if there's anything they do well, is nothing.
Yes.
So therefore, Trump has really got to come out, in my opinion, tomorrow night at the debate and bring this, what they call the tax-ageddon issue, to the forefront, because this is an automatic Harris biggest tax increase in history without her lifting a finger. Yeah. And that has got to be a bigger part of this campaign, I think, especially now where she's talking about how he's going to raise taxes. It's just absurd, the type of campaign we're seeing run now.
Yeah, before I switch over to you, I want to follow up with you something, Trey, on what Jim just said. If you're sitting at home and you're watching this on your phone, laptop, whatever, iPad, and you like this kind of discussion, this kind of nitty-gritty detail, and understanding that all of this, of course, is against the great canvas of saving souls, because, look, they win. It's communism, and that's just what it is. So if you'd like to keep supporting what we're doing or start supporting what we're doing, please just click on that donate button and make whatever contribution you can. You can be a founding member and get in touch with us that way. You can be a monthly subscriber. You can make one-time donation. Of course, all of this, as you know, is expensive to do. So whatever you're able to do, we appreciate it. And those of you who are supporters right now, thank you very much. Trey, I want to come back to you on this one question. How aggressive, without being labeled, he hates women, and all of that stuff, the kind of intangibles, but the things that so many people tend to vote on, at least a good portion of the population, how does he navigate these waters? She says she's Black, she's a woman, and she's not going to get one of her I'm speaking moments. So that stuff isn't going to come out. So how does Trump navigate these waters? And he's got to be aggressive, but not too aggressive, and all of that sort of stuff. I mean, this is an interesting cat and mouse game here.
Well, I think Former President Trump has a lot of experience in this type of debate environment because he debated Hillary Clinton previously. And he had that same concern is he didn't, you don't want to attack her too much for being a woman, and you don't want to attack her in her particular case on race and those type of things. But but those are legitimate forms of attack when she tries to use them as a defensive. I mean, she can't come out and just say, I'm the only one who understands women issues, and therefore I'm the only one who understands, how abortion should be handled, to get to the point we were talking about earlier. I mean, Donald Trump is very well versed on abortion, can talk about abortion, and can talk about how he has done more to help advance the cause of women's rights than Kamala Harris has ever even thought about doing in her position as vice president, which is amazing to me, given that she's been given carte blanche to go around the world and talk about these issues and didn't do it. I mean, to be real honest with you, Melania Trump spent more time talking about women's issues around the world than Kamala Harris ever has. And Kamala Harris actually has a platform to be able to do that, whereas Melania had one only as first lady. So, for me, it's one of those things where you can't let them own those issues. And I think Donald Trump will be his normal aggressive self against her on pertinent issues, to talk about those things that she's just flat out wrong on.
Good question back to you, Trey, and then a follow-up with you, Jim, on the same question. It seems to me, because their stuff is so outlandish, that, hey, that there's no crisis on the border, and, hey, things are great, and, Donald Trump's going to raise your taxes. I mean, just on and on and on and on. I mean, all of it. Are they banking on, in your opinion, that enough of the electorate has simply been dummied down to accept all this crap and vote accordingly? Trey?
I think that is absolutely part of the Democratic Party's game plan here, is to think that the American people have bought hook, line, and sinker the lies that they've been pushing for the past 4 years. And if they say the lie long enough, people will believe it. I think that they're going to do that. Now, I have complete confidence in the American people to see past that, to see. And again, it comes down to the issues that affect them the most. I mean, when you start thinking about the economy and you open up your wallet and there's not $20 in there to give the kids to go to the Friday night football game, that's one of those issues that they're going to be voting on. The money's just not there. And under Donald Trump, I had that money in my wallet, and under this administration, I don't. So this Harris administration has been disastrous. And I think that Donald Trump will capitalize on that in the debate. But they don't have any other play to make. I mean, they tried to nationalize this election around abortion, which is the play that the congressional caucus needs to have on the Democratic side to nationalize it. Kamala Harris really can't make that same play, because it's not driving voters at the presidential level like it should. I mean, as you said, with only 12% of the people responding, that's not a part of the electorate that she needs to be focused on. And surprisingly enough, she's still focused on trying to land some of that base.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, when you say they didn't ask 12%, are you all, are you all pro-abortion? I mean, it was said 12% just identified abortion to them as the most important issue. Well, I mean, right. Personally, I would be in that group. So, and I'm as pro-life as any pro-lifer walking. So I don't know that you can just say, oh, here's 12% of the electorate they have, because there's an awful lot of people in that 12% who are also pro-lifers. There's probably more pro-aborts, but, I don't know that those two don't sort of come close to canceling each other out. It's not 12% in the end. I just, that makes no sense. Sure. It just makes no sense. Jim, right back to you too. Are they just counting on people being dumb?
No, I think they're counting on them being confused. And I think they want to confuse the issues as much as possible, obviously on purpose. And then they think people were confused. I said, well, then it comes down to, who do I like better?
Yeah.
And, I don't know what they're saying on these issues and everything, but I hate Trump, so I'm going to vote for Harris. She can't be that bad. I think that's what they're trying to promulgate here, with this constant issue change, and just basically just saying things they know that aren't true. Like, there's no border problem. The economy's fine. We're going to get prices down, and trying to blame Trump for all the things that they caused. It's laughable to a degree, but I think they're doing it in order to confuse people. and then hope they just vote on emotion at that point and who they like. I think that's what they're trying to do.
Well, as the saying goes, you can fool all of the people some of the time. Question is that all the ones you're fooling some of the time sufficient number? Yeah. Trey, right back to you. There was a letter that was put out over the weekend, and I can't believe that Kamala is going to stand up on that stage tomorrow and wave the letter around and say, "Oh, look at all the people." Well, actually, 2 letters. All the people that used to be your workers in the administration are all like, Donald Trump sucks. Nobody could ever vote for him again. And we know because we worked with him. And then there is that, all the CEOs of like Costco and all of that who came out and said, absolutely not. The economy would do horrible under Donald Trump. It's endorsements, vote for Kamala. The Cheneys coming out saying, vote for Kamala. I shock. I know, really. Mitt Romney is going to vote for Kamala, really? But endorsements certainly don't carry the weight they used to, largely thanks to social media. But still, she's going to wave those 2 letters around. All these people that she's already got an ad out on social media. If all the people that work for Donald Trump, aren't going to support him, why would you? How effective can she make any hay with any of that? Or, it's got, mainstream liberal media commentators sitting there moderating the debate. I mean, I can't imagine they're not going to say, well, President Trump, blah, 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 blah. Why is, Kamala wrong on this? Because all these former workers of yours say you suck and no one should vote for you.
Look, if I was Donald Trump, I would respond to that directly and say, I'm glad that I'm not endorsed by a bunch of Washington insiders. I've always been an outsider and I will continue to be an outsider. And the Washington insiders are going to continue to endorse the folks who are going to keep the deep state alive. And that's exactly what this race is about. And at the end of the day, I think that's the best way to respond to that and to the CEOs who are out there talking about. Look, those CEOs want nothing more than cheap labor. They're all about the illegal immigration because they want the cheap labor to go along with it. Those are the 2 best responses for him. And, if I'm him, I close with what we were talking about just a moment ago, which is, his retort during the Hannity interview of, you can't take a chance on what Kamala Harris's positions are in this election. Whether you like me or not, you know my positions and you know what I'm going to do and you know what I've done to deliver for the American people. And therefore you have to vote for me, because you can't take a chance on where she's going to end up in the flip-flop. When it comes to your pocketbook, when it comes to the border, when it comes to ending all of the wars that are going on around the world. Those type of things are issues that are lock solid in Donald Trump's wheelhouse, and everybody knows exactly where he's going to come down.
Yeah, Jim, is it time to bring out the "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago" line? Because you bring that yardstick out. That's what pushed Reagan to victory in 1980.
Yes, yeah, we very well may see that. And the answer, most people would say, is no. Things are not better 4 years hence Trump leaving office. So, yeah, that's something heavily in his favor. The other thing I hope he brings up is the issue of safety, because that ties in foreign affairs and crime. We have major foreign affairs problems here. And it's only going to get worse if Kamala Harris is elected. I'm sure Vladimir Putin and Chairman Xi and Kim Jong-un, they're going to be dancing in the streets if she gets elected. Oh, yeah. And in fact, that's why you notice that Putin said he would prefer her because she would be more honest to deal with. Well, that tells you that what more do you need to know? He knows he can run rings around her. Yeah. And I think that I think they're right. And so there's no doubt that they're going to be all for Kamala Harris, because they know they being China and Russia, would become the premier countries to dominate the world. And no longer the U.S. would be in that prime position.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. So let me ask specific. These are all topics of the debates and stuff, but let me get into a little nitty gritty. I'll start with Trey and come back to the same question to you, Jim. What do you expect tomorrow night from the moderators, of the debate? During the Biden-Trump debate, we were all kind of a little shocked watching it, like, wow, they're not, coming out strong against Trump. They're just letting him say what he wants and moving on with the next question and all of that. Do we see the, no, that's not right, Mr. Trump, responses from them tomorrow?
I anticipate that the moderators will be 100% in the Kamala Harris camp for this debate. They have no choice but to do that because the entire media establishment has banked on this Kamala Harris play in eliminating. They were part of the big coup effort to push him out and put her in place. And so I think they have to do everything they can to make that look legitimate, to make it seem like it was the viable option. And so I think you're going to have that pushback. I think that the debate will probably occur between the moderators and Donald Trump when they push back on him, and they won't push back on any answers that she gives. And part of the reason they won't push back on any answers that she gives is that there's nothing to push back on, because whatever policy she announces is probably going to be the first time that anybody's heard of it at that particular debate. I mean, there's such scant material out on her website or anywhere else about what her policy positions are. It's kind of hard to react. I mean, you're having to react in real time, and that's where I think President Trump is at his best, is that he reacts best in real time to hearing policy proposals, better than anybody I know. So, I think he'll do fine in the debate, but he's going to be debating her, but he's more so going to be debating the moderators.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, that's what we were all expecting with Biden, but of course they wanted Biden to fall on his face. That's why that debate happened.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, I think there was also a lot of criticism of the CNN people before the debate, and I think they were a little kind of nervous about that. They didn't want to look too biased. I don't think the ABC people will be worried about that part.
No,
and it's going to be 3-on-1 clearly.
Sure.
And really the main bias, I think, in this, from all of these debates, is the types of questions that are asked. It's all going to be asked about making Trump answer the left-wing agenda.
Exactly.
None of the questions will be geared towards making Harris defend herself on the border, defend herself on foreign affairs, defend herself on the economy. It's all going to be geared abortion, all of the left-wing talking points, probably the transgenders, and like Gary, you mentioned the letter of the people that used to work for Trump, and on and on and on. That's going to be the line of questioning. So I think that's where the real bias comes in. It's the types of questions that are asked, and it's all on the left's agenda.
Trey, given the distrust of the American populace regarding the media, mainstream media, that gives Trump an opening to be able to, maybe funnily, maybe a little humorously, although he doesn't really seem to get very humorous with the media when he's pushing back on them in real time. But nonetheless, I mean, it makes sense. I would, if I'm Trump and they say something and say, well, not for nothing, guys, but here you go again. You're not asking her a single hard question. You haven't gone through on why inflation sucks, the border, the crisis, the oil, everything, nothing. And you keep asking me about being a felon in a rigged trial. We're not going to have that go here. Nobody at home cares about that. They care about what's going to happen to them in the next 4 years. And why don't you start gearing your questions towards that? It seems to me he can go wild against the moderators. He has to be somewhat navigating against Harris herself. What do you think of that?
Absolutely. I mean, if it's a debate between him and the moderators, he wins every time because the American people hate the media so much and distrust it so much. I mean, he'll probably make his joke, as he usually does, is that the only reason that the debate's even getting ratings is because he's there, not because it's on ABC. I mean, they're gonna face that criticism because nobody thinks that it's fair to be on ABC. Right. It's being, originally wasn't scheduled to be on ABC. There was originally a Fox debate that she skipped. So at the end of the day, he's got all of the ammunition that he needs to both poke at them in jest and to poke at them in the reality of the belief of the American people that they're not being unbiased.
My concern, and we'll wrap it up here with this, and want to get your guys' final thoughts on it. My concern is not so much that he, all the moderators and her no policy and all that. My concern is that there is so much crap on the table against her that he might stumble through this by not taking the opportunity at every single moment he has to. That's my concern, that he won't exploit the moment enough. Because frankly, I mean, you guys know this, I know this, anybody who deals in this stuff all the time, there's so much stuff. I don't want him to have them blown opportunities here. What do you think of that?
Gary, there is, but I think if you look at Donald Trump's track record in debates, that you can be confident that he will narrow everything down and focus on what he needs to focus on to get his message across. I mean, you're talking about the same man who stood on a stage with 10, 12 other Republican candidates in 2016. Then it was, and however many debates. I mean, there's so many people in that primary that they had to have two separate debates at two separate times.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he defeated all of them. He went up against Hillary Clinton in the multiple debates that they had. He's debated Joe Biden several times. He's the only candidate that we know of these days that's ever debated a sitting president and knocked them out of the race before anybody had an opportunity to vote. So the fact of the matter is that I think he can be particularly focused on the issues that he needs to focus on.
All right. Good wrapping up thought. Jim, we'll let you bring us home on that same question.
Well, I just hope that he focuses his attack because, Gary, as you mentioned, there's so much for him to cover and there's so many discrepancies in her record that I think it's going to get confusing if he tries to go down too many paths. So I think if he limits it to 1, 2, 3 at the most criticisms and keeps coming back to prove that what she's saying tonight isn't what she said before. In other words, the old lawyer's question, are you lying to us then or are you lying to us now? Yeah. And I think if he keeps it on that type of plane, that he'll be much better off.
Speaking of lying, I lied. I'm going to put you guys on the spot. Trey, who wins?
I think Donald Trump wins the debate, but I think that the narrative coming out of it is that Kamala Harris had a great debate because they've set the bar so low that if she just shows up and can put together a sentence at this point, they're going to claim that it's a victory for her because the media has played it out to be that, that he's going to wipe the floor with her.
Yeah. All right.
I agree 100% with what Trey just said. Yeah, I think Trump wins the debate, but the media will cast it as a big plus for Kamala.
Yeah. And, we see what their, rah-rah Kamala stuff has done so far. It's all petered out, and here we are. Yeah. All right. As usual, men, excellent insights. We will be back with you for analysis of the debate on Wednesday, so we can y'all can come here. Did I just say y'all? Yeah, I'm in Texas, man. Y'all can come back here and and watch the authentic analysis of the debate. Thanks very much, guys. We'll see you on Wednesday. God bless. Thank you. All right. Okay. And before we leave you, the closing thought here, there's a major earthquake of sorts happening in America politically. It's a realignment very few saw coming before the emergence of Donald Trump. It's not any longer about a given party, Democrat or Republican, as it is a view of the government. There are some Republicans, as well as most Democrats, who do want huge, in-your-face, down-your-throat government in every single aspect of your life. Weak personalities, again, in both parties, but mostly Democrats, are drawn to this. They want protection and coddling and money and to be taken care of. They view big government as their safety. These people like a big, giant, oppressive, smothering government, although that's not probably how they would describe it. People like Harris, obviously, Biden, Liz Cheney, Dick Cheney, Mitt Romney, Adam Kinzinger, the whole bunch of them. By the way, notice I mentioned both parties there. Those elites like it because they profit from it personally. And they present and push all the propaganda to help weak minds and frail personalities accept all that baloney. Then there is the other side, the limited and barely visible government types who want freedom to pursue dreams and hard work and be rewarded for their merit and all of that. These common people have as their elites Trump, Elon, RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, Tucker, and so forth. The difference between the elites is one profits from taking other people's money through taxation, while the Trumpian elites profit from hard work, ingenuity, enterprise, all of those sorts of things. But there is a warning here, an underlying danger to the Trumpian worldview, which is always better than the communist worldview. It's the same warning St. John Paul issued in the race for self-determination. Don't forget about God and right religion. Freedom, yes, but not for anything you want to use your freedom for. Communists crush freedom. They hate it, like they hate everything. God, man, blacks, children, religion, enterprise, anything that lifts man up. And while that hatred for the goods of humanity must always and everywhere be resisted and conquered, it must be accompanied by a respect for what our freedom is for. Man has freedom to choose God and to orient his life toward Him, something communists will always seek to destroy. Man must not only be free, but use his freedom in accordance for the purpose it was given to us by Almighty God, which ultimately is to live life with Him in eternity. One could make the case that communism has been able to make the inroads it has, even here in the United States, because too many have misused their freedom, our freedom. And as a result, we stand on the precipice of losing it, just like Ronald Reagan said would happen. A Trump win is not the end, to paraphrase Winston Churchill when the Allies secured the beachhead in Normandy. It's not the end, it's not even the beginning of the end, but it is perhaps the end of the beginning. Win in November and then secure the victory moving forward. God love you. I'm Gary Michael Voris.